You know, I don't really like talking about the prospect of a civil war because it sounds so insane. It just doesn't seem possible. But there's a bias in that, the optimism bias. There's also the way things have always been bias. People hear about the potential for a civil war and they think, no, it'll never happen. And I'll say this too. One of the big problems is that the assumption is some kind of civil war would take the same form as it did in the first Civil War. But we don't know what it'll actually look like. It might not even be like a civil war, but maybe a revolution. It could be a complete fracturing of, social cohesion. It could be insurgency between extremist groups and the government, so 3 factions. We don't know what it's going to look like. But I will tell you this. Take a look at this shirt. Jack Posobiec tweeted this. Spotted in Philly. I'm not going to read what that says. They're advocating for the death of Proud Boys. This guy's wearing that shirt. You see something like this, and you have to wonder, when will it get to that point? Well, take a look at Andy No's situation in Portland. Antifa beat the crap out of a gay Asian. Why? They didn't like his opinions. That's really it. That's really it. Does Andy organize protests? No, he just shows up and shares information. We're at a point now where the far left views the sharing of information as a political act. You have the people in media doing so, saying that they call it mission-driven storytelling. You've got now this news, 2 years ago, I believe it was 2 years ago at VidCon, the president saying they worked with anti-Trump activists. They don't make news anymore. It's all propaganda. They say there's no such thing as objective journalism. There is. It's not perfect, but the idea of objectivity does exist. I'll simply explain it. If I see 2 guys fighting in the street, I can objectively say that guy punched that guy. If one of those people, one of those guys is my brother, I cannot objectively tell you what happened because I have personal interests. Personal interests are everywhere. So technically it's true there's no objectivity in journalism, but that's making the assumption the individual is omniscient. What happened, in my opinion, is that the left is using this as an excuse to manipulate people into thinking they must be activists and push propaganda. It is their excuse for lying to you, to encourage extremism. I've got more things I want to show you, though. Look, whatever civil conflict, whatever's going to happen, it's coming. The escalation is clear as day. The dominoes are falling over. That's what it looks like to me. You can go back in time and think about where everything started to where it is today, and it seems so obvious. You're like, yeah, that's the obvious outcome. And that's what I said. 2 years ago, year and a half ago, this will only escalate. It's going to get worse. At first, it was people punching each other. Now you've got a dude actually saying, that's literally telling people to go end someone else's life. Walking around D.C. like no big deal. Don't worry, there's more. Ford Fisher, a journalist covering the July 4th event in Washington, D.C., tweeted this 14 hours ago. Things turned conversational for a while until a person on the left-wing side headbutted a right-winger, which turned the situation into a brawl. When he responded by punching her in the face, she was arrested. So my understanding is that there were several instances of violence in which the left got arrested, not the right. Proud Boys, I believe no Proud Boys were arrested. Left-wingers were, because you can see in these videos, I think there's a better footage of it. Check this out. I'll come back to this. Here's better footage. Whoa, that's really loud. None of that. Turn the volume. You can see this person headbutted first. It's kind of hard to see, actually. So the person on the left headbutts the person on the right. The person on the right punches back. The question, so when you look at this, it's kind of like, yes, so what, people are fighting. But this is a 4th of July event in front of the White House. And now, so listen, let me try and back up. When you have Trump supporters holding a rally and Antifa shows up and they fight, it's kind of like, well, that's a really specific thing where someone planned an event and people showed up. When you have a 4th of July celebration and people are just walking around with American flags and fights break out, we're now getting to the point where it's not organized events that are resulting in violence. It's just people out in the streets on a day. Tomorrow, there's going to be a free speech rally in D.C., and Antifa is expected to show up. I think things will get really bad. Look at what just happened to Andy No. Now, actually, let's do this. Let's go to the next image. Marcus DePaula tweeted this. Communists burn a flag in front of the White House, toss it on a U.S. Secret Service police who recoils in pain. Another USS member comes in with a fire extinguisher and puts it out. We actually have this video here from Ford. I believe this is the video footage. It's hard to make out because you can imagine this stuff's all... Actually, no, this might not be the same thing. Yeah, okay, this is a different incident. Okay, this is a different incident where a fight breaks out after someone burns the flag, and then a Trump supporter, I guess, gets angry about the burning of the flag, actually rushes the crowd. It's hard to make out. But you can see this person wearing red that runs into the crowd and starts shoving people. So I believe we have a statement here. Ford Fisher says, here's the Secret Service statement on the Communist Party versus Proud Boys fight. They say 2 were arrested. I counted 3, but I may be wrong. And 2 officers are reportedly in the hospital. To explain the discrepancy and how many got arrested, it's possible 3 people were initially detained and 1 was let go and 2 were arrested. But let's read. The Secret Service says, at approximately 5:30 p.m. today, U.S. Secret Service Uniform Division officers responded to an incident that occurred on Pennsylvania Avenue involving an individual who was burning an American flag outside the limits of a permit that had been issued by the National Park Service. 2 individuals were arrested, one for felony assault on a police officer and malicious burning. So a communist literally lit a flag on fire and threw it at a cop. He got arrested for it. Felony charges. The other for obstructing a police investigation and resisting arrest. My assumption would be a de-arrest attempt, as they call it, de-arrest. When the police try arresting someone, the far left will try and pull them out. 1 individual was transported to a local hospital for minor injuries, and the other was transported to MPD 2nd District for processing. 2 officers with the Secret Service Uniform Division received minor injuries while attempting to make arrests and were transported to a local hospital. Secret Service were hospitalized by the far left, and 1 of them got burned. So, look, this isn't, in my opinion, the most extreme instance of escalation. I think the Andy No instance is probably the most extreme escalation we've seen in a long time for 2 reasons. The attack on a non-affiliated actor, they will claim Andy No is now an affiliated actor, meaning they assign him to the right, even though he's just a journalist. They're also the point here is, Andy No is not organizing with the Proud Boys. He's not marching with them. He's not fighting with them. He's just filming. But they've now said, it doesn't matter. You oppose us, you are them. The lines are being drawn where there's no middle anymore. It used to be that there was a place you could stand on in the middle, especially if you were a journalist. Not anymore. Following this, journalists, I'll do air quotes, journalists came out and said, well, he should have known better. He's not a journalist. How many verified individuals said he's not a journalist? And therein lies the extreme escalation. Now, this is moderate escalation. We're in an extreme space. I'm not saying things aren't getting psychotic, but this isn't the biggest escalation. Some fights broke out, right? But it is escalation, and we're already in dangerous territory. This guy wearing this shirt, I ask you, where do you think this goes? That's what I've been saying for the past week. When Ocasio-Cortez says we've got concentration camps on the border, when the left and the right live in 2 different realities. You've got Holocaust survivors saying it's not a concentration camp, and some saying it is. And then the left takes those sources and say, aha, we're right. And the right takes the other source and says, aha, we're right. Then these people come out and say, go kill the other people. You now have active calls for murder. This is it right here. A woman on Twitter said, remember what we used to do? Drag people out of their houses and beat them to death? I guess we'll have to start throwing bricks. Twitter allows it. 2 different realities are emerging where neither side can actually reconcile their beliefs. Let me move on and explain. I highlighted this story a couple days ago, but I want to stress 2 big stories in the escalation narrative. This is a Vox article from the 1st, okay? Vox, V-O-X, left wing. It says, I'm a left-wing anarchist. Guns aren't just for right-wingers. The story basically says, hey, you can have guns. Antifa is arming. Why don't you? In the story, they say it's about protecting marginalized communities. Language that doesn't make sense to the right. It's just left-wing propaganda. It's a narrative that exists on the left. It doesn't exist on the right. It's the alternate reality where they're saying you need to take up guns to protect marginalized communities. What do they say all day and night? They say the Proud Boys and the right are terrorizing marginalized communities. That's literally what they say. Now they're saying protect them with guns. Here's the thing. You have a right to own guns in this country, and you have a right to actually carry them to certain degrees, different jurisdictions, different laws. In some states, concealed carry is illegal without a permit. It's kind of crazy. Tend to be more rural states. In some states, it's just basically illegal to have a gun, period, which I believe is unconstitutional for the most part. And like Illinois lost a case, years ago. And now you can actually, I think you can open carry. I'm not entirely sure. So look, you're allowed to carry guns, but I assure you, when you have these 2 narratives emerging, The far left is violent. The far right is violent. Then both say, aha, it's you. They fight. I will make one important point, a caveat, before we move on to the more terrifying. Actually, no. I'll make this point as we move into the next article. Another article that I highlighted. Antifa is arming itself against a Trump crackdown. Will leftist pro-gun groups deter political violence or inflame it? Here's the thing. There was a story I read a long time ago. I don't know if it's an urban legend, if it's apocryphal, if it was meant to be a lesson, or if it was an actual news story, because I was told this by someone and it was like 13 years ago. But there was a news story somewhere where two guys were driving, and I believe it was in Texas. And this, again, I do not know where the source is. This was like, I think I was like 20 years old when someone told me the story. And basically, one guy rear-ended the other guy on accident. The guy in front who got rear-ended was really, really pissed off. He gets out of his car, outraged, yelling and screaming, like, what the hell are you doing? The other guy in the back gets out of the car because this guy is approaching his car. He doesn't want to be inside. I don't know why. The guy in front they're both open carrying. So then when the guy gets out of his car, so we'll call guy A, the guy who rear-ended the guy in the front. Guy A gets out and he's calmer, like, oh man, I can't believe I rear-ended this guy. Guy B is furious he got rear-ended. Guy A sees this dude screaming and yelling, furious, and he's got a gun. So Guy A puts his hand up and puts his hand near his hip, saying, hey, stop, don't come near me. Guy B, who's outraged, sees him going towards his gun and grabs his gun, thinking the other guy's going to grab his gun. That rapid escalation resulted in both of them drawing on each other. So again, it could just be apocryphal, it could just be a story. The point is, not that you shouldn't be allowed to carry guns, not that people who own guns are violent, but that sometimes people get angry and things can escalate. When you look at these conflicting narratives where both sides are like the other side is evil, period, what do you think happens then when you now have people actively saying, go kill them, and now you have Vox saying, get your guns? I think it's pretty obvious where we're going. It's not going to be, in my opinion, that this guy who says, go kill the other guys, shows up with a gun and starts firing on people. These things have happened, mind you. I think what's going to happen is you're going to have redneck revolt, you're going to have oath keepers, things are going to get out of hand, and someone's going to draw, and someone's going to be like, hey man, stop. They're going to have a gun. Someone else is going to have a gun, and people are going to panic, and then it's going to escalate to that point. Someone might throw a brick. Someone might throw a firecracker. And then you've got a bunch of people of opposing ideologies armed and pointing at each other. And eventually, I believe we will see a shot heard around the world. Some key moment where something happens with gunshots, results in a gunfight. Here's the thing. I could be wrong. I don't think I'm the smartest person in the world. But I gotta say, all signs are pointing in one direction. When the New Republic and Vox are straight up saying, maybe you should have guns. Maybe the left was wrong. Then you see people wearing these shirts. I gotta say, man, I don't think you're gonna be able to tell me it's not gonna happen. But here's the big main takeaway. It is not that, the issue isn't that the far right and the far left are focused on each other. The issue is that the far right has been pushed away and are fringe lunatics. Almost all instances of far right extremism are tiny groups of crazy people that everybody hates. The example I often use, Steve King, okay, in Congress. He made a statement about white nationalism in a positive light and was immediately removed from all committees. Everyone denounced him. On the left, Ilhan Omar does something similar. They don't remove her. They don't denounce her. They denounce bigotry. Here's what happens. On the right, conservatives have no problem saying, we don't like those guys either. On the left, they literally say Republicans. I kid you not. In the New Republic article, it says, some of their members hope such efforts will at least make Republicans think twice before attempting a massacre. When has a Republican committed a massacre? Sure, I mean, I'm not saying it never happened, but all of the big stories we've heard so far are not Republicans. The guy in New Zealand, he said he hated Trump, right? These are people who don't like Trump. People in the alt-right have denounced Trump. There have been statements from many of the fringe right groups saying they tacitly support him because he's better than nothing. That's it. Or because at least he's a nationalist. But they're not Republicans. They're identitarians. And the conservatives had no problem calling them out. Republicans had no problem saying, get out of here. The Democrats. How many condemned Antifa? How many are calling this out? Herein lies the big problem. Most Republicans that I know on Twitter are saying violence is bad, period. But look at the high-profile people on the left. Charlotte Clymer of the Human Rights Campaign, saying the attack on Andy Ngo was the greatest thing for his career. When did anyone on the right, a prominent Republican, say that violence was a good thing that benefited somebody? It may have happened, but at least if it did, it is rare. Because even the highest profile Trump supporters have condemned violence across the board. But the left has people at Kotaku, they've got people at the New York Times, they've got people at the Human Rights Campaign saying, hey, it was Andy's fault. Or, this is good for him. It helped him. Here's what happens. The far left is in the mainstream. The far left is in Congress. That's what's disconcerting to me. Andy Ngo said, and actually I think this goes back to Jordan Peterson too, that society knows when the right goes too far. But society doesn't know when the left goes too far. Everyone in the mainstream, from the right to the left, knows when the right goes too far. But when the left goes too far, what happens? People defend it. I think the real issue is that there's many people who have gotten jobs who are fringe identitarians, who are, woke Democrats who are just burning everything down. But I will tell you the most terrifying thing. The Oath Keepers are not a neo-Nazi group, by no stretch of the imagination. They're an armed, constitutionalist group. From what I understand, I've interviewed them, very calm and, they've got some controversies, but they're not crazy, lunatics going around, trying to wage war or revolution. They're the Oath Keepers, swearing an oath to uphold the Constitution. By all means, you don't have to like them. They're traditionalists, but they are not a fringe group. And I will give credit to Redneck Revolt as well. Of the people I've seen from Redneck Revolt, they are not the crazy, fringe, psychotic Antifa we typically see in the streets. The videos I've seen from them is that they're actually well trained with firearms, and they're actually really calm, and they try and keep things tempered. I've also seen leftist gun groups and right-wing gun groups have a handshake and come together based on their enthusiasm for gun culture and safety, and they had good conversations. While the left and the right were screaming, they were standing together. So there is some good commonality between them. I don't want to act like either side is a fringe, nightmarish group. What I do want to say, though, is that when the left views the Republicans all as one monolith, that the fringe far-right extremists who everyone hates are Republicans, they're going to show up to a Trump rally and attack people. That's what they've done. Now what's going to happen, and I'm scared of, what I think is worrying, is that somebody will see this story about Redneck Revolt. Somebody will see this story from Vox, and they will buy a gun, and they're not going to be a well-trained and calm, rational, individual. They're going to be an unhinged, terrified individual who panics and fires that first round, that shot heard round the world, which results in a gunfight. What worries me is that Redneck Revolt will be on one side, the Oath Keepers will be on the other, a crazy person will fire a shot, and both sides will take cover, and things will go completely out of control. No one will know who fired first. It may not be that way. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I don't know enough about guns. It's possible. It's also possible that if something like that happens, both sides will immediately not fire because they are trained, and they'll try and hold back to try and assess the situation. But if you get one crazy person, in fact, you could even get a false flag. Someone puts on a black mask and pretends to be Antifa. Somebody puts on a Proud Boy shirt, pretends to be a Proud Boy, and just fires indiscriminately. Then what happens? The escalation is upon us. And I'll tell you this, man, after the attack on Andy Ngo, they are normalizing attacks on regular people. And now we saw this. People walking around in shirts calling for murder. Rhetoric that incites in this way, we see where it's going. So look, man, there's an event tomorrow, right? There's an event tomorrow in D.C. Antifa and the right are probably going to fight. And I hope it doesn't get really bad. But now we've got two left-wing outlets saying, hey, guns are a good thing. Go get your guns. Got to stop those Republicans, right? That's what they're doing. They claim that Trump is running concentration camps. You will literally, I believe we will see La Resistance type insurgency soon. People are going to try and liberate the camps because they're saying, like, what would you have done in World War II? I'll leave it there, man. I could rant on this for a million years, so stick around. Next segment will be at 1 p.m. on this channel, and I will see you all there.